Hello, everyone. Welcome to this webinar from the webinar series from Emerging Technology. We're going to do the English part now. We've done the French one this morning, and now it's the English one. We're going to talk about MAD, that stands for Merging Audio Device, which is something completely new that we're going to launch in a few weeks. And before starting anything, I wanted just to say hello to my friend Ricardo that is above me. Oh, he has to unmute his microphone.
Oh, here it is. Hope you are doing well and not too warm.
Yes, we're very warm here. We're sweating actually. So we might interrupt from time to time to have a little bit of water or whatever. So
Exactly.
if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to use the comments with the live chat of YouTube. If also something has been misunderstood or technically wrong, the sound or whatever, do not hesitate to comment, and we will try to do our best to accommodate. Good. So what we're going to do here is that basically we have a little slideshow that you see here on the right side of your screen, and Ricardo above me and me below, and we're going to interact and talk about what MAD is. So the new merging audio device is basically on the ASIO world in the Windows 10 environment, replacing the ASIO AS67 Ravenna driver. So for those who are familiar with our hardware, with Anubis, Hapi, and Horus, and using either Pyramix as a DAW or any type of ASIO-driven DAW, they have a driver, basically, a virtual sound card to be able to run their device over the network to the computer. And this is now changing, and this is bringing a lot of new features that we're going to see. And we're going to try to make it in two ways. One way is for people who don't know what it is, so they discover it, which is great. But at the same time, for people who are used to the previous driver to see what the differences are and where to find their menus so that they feel at home very quickly again. And we're going to see then three practical cases that you see below, basically for Pyramix users with the application then of the VDM. So this is wrong, it's not Windows Media Driver, but it is Windows device. What is it already, Ricardo? I forget always. Basically,
Oh my gosh.
it is Windows, not device, it is Windows. Oh my God, that doesn't matter. We're gonna come back. It's written later on the slide. I just don't remember for the moment. The VDM integration basically in this merging audio device, and then of course linked to
Well,
all.
it's actually a Windows Media device normally.
Exactly, thank you. Windows Media device, and then for all kinds of DAW users, so not only obviously for Pyramix. So let's start here, and we're gonna go to the first slide, and here we're gonna see what this first slide brings us, and I just got to move Ricardo back to this side there. Okay, this first slide is about the old driver on the left side and the new driver or the new device on the right side. You see that there are some differences. What is very clear to be kept in mind is that we need some hardware, some merging hardware, basically a Hapi, a Horus, or in that case an Anubis, to be able to run one or the other. This doesn't change. And that brings us to the next slide, where we're going to see that there are some differences, and we're going to start with the first one, and we're going to go through all the differences, and I'm going to show you also in live, as I have a system here where I have a few of those things installed so that we can see how it runs. So first of all, what changes is on the top left, the mode. You have two modes, general and NADAC. NADAC is obviously for the hi-fi usage for people using NADAC or the NADAC player, and we're not going to talk about this here, but either or the one or the other, you're going to use the general, which we're going to talk about, which is the classic Anubis, Hapi or Horus status, or the NADAC one. In case you use a NADAC, you're going to choose that one, and the structure of the merging audio device is going to change. And this is where it becomes interesting, and you see each time you find this on the left side, on the old driver, we highlighted what it corresponds, or where is the corresponding functionalities and features. So the first thing is that here, like before, you have to set which one is your network adapter. So in my case, I'm on the laptop, so I will have a USB-C to Ethernet adapter, and where I connect my cable, and this is the IP address that I have at the moment. So this is what I've selected. Of course, if you have a desktop or whatever, you might have hardware, Ethernet connectors, RJ45, and then you select them there. What is new though is that just below you see that we have a secondary adapter, and this is an option. It's more really a broadcast related option for a specific protocol called ST2022-7. That's a little bit undigestible name, but that's how it is. And this means actually is that you can have a second exactly the same connection to another network port, and this means that all what you do on this MAD, sending or returning audio, is also copied one-to-one, or basically redundant one-to-one on this other network card. This is obviously, you can imagine, for broadcasters very, very interesting when they do a live game or whatever it is in sport. They want to make sure that everything functions and is redundant, and this is exactly what it's made for. And this is something new, and this is optional in the merging audio device.
Yeah, we kind of adapt to the market of the demands, and this is a new protocol that's a new standard for some broadcasters to have redundant streaming. So, yeah.
If we have any, or if there are any listeners specifically about the broadcast environment, ST2110, ST2022-7, and so on, we have other webinars that are specifically aimed on that aspect, and some new ones that will be made during this summer or later this summer about not only, but about also specifically the secondary adapter in here. Then below, this is also important, this is basically the latency of the device, of the merging audio device. Not only this merging audio device, but basically every device, either software or hardware, sitting on the network. And we have two protocols basically, or two standards. One is AS67 and the other one is Ravenna. That means that this device has to be set into, at this moment, AS67 to be able to be in an AS67 network. If I would be in a Ravenna network, I would set it to 64. When I install by default all merging devices, they come in AS67. So naturally here I have nothing to do. This is then a more advanced mode if you want to go into a Ravenna modus, because you know what you're doing or what you want to do. So let's keep it in AS67 for those who know about it. We have here the sub-factors of the 48 frames, 12 frames or 6 frames that you can go down, and then the 64, 32, 16 in the Ravenna modus. And as a reminder again, please set Horus, Hapi, Anubis and all the MAD that you have on the same network to the same latency. Otherwise, you will have dysfunctioning or misfunctioning usage of the different devices.
And a big warning message in red at the bottom. So we'd like to warn you if you do something wrong here.
Exactly. The next thing, yes, this was the secondary adapter I was talking about. I'm not going to mention anything again about it. The new thing here, which is rather something very nice and neat to be able to use, is directly to have the remote control basically launch, or the shortcut to the remote control of all your merging devices. That means that if I have a web browser, which I have, for instance, in my computer, this is just, I have to open my real merging audio device to be able to double click. This is my real audio merging device. Now I double click in here, and it will open my web browser on my other window, and I will bring it over here. And so I have now there my Anubis that shows up, and I have the remote control of my Anubis that I can use here, and directly remote control my Anubis. And this is straight away the correct Anubis that has been set here. If I would have a Hapi, it will show up there. If I have a Horus, it will show up here. And if I have several of all those devices, there will be a little roll-up bar, so that I can scroll through the screen here and choose my different devices I would like to open and to remote control with. Obviously, this is called Anubis 600-284. This is my serial number. If I would like, I can call it Anubis Morris, and it will be written Anubis Morris there, or Studio One, or Studio Ricardo, or whatever it is. Good. Then continuing over here, this is now the status of the merging audio device. You see that it gives a sample rate. We're going to come to the sample rate a bit later. I just go step by step through the menus, but obviously the setting of the sample rate is done somewhere else. Here there's nothing to set, it's just status basically, it's just giving you information of the merging audio device. So the first thing is that we are on 48K, that we are running, we are running well. Obviously the message, if there would be an error message or whatever, it would show up here. And here, this is where I'm now connected to this IP address. You will see that it is the same as here. Sorry, it is the same beginning as here, and then of course a different designation of the device. That we're in 48K, and that our latency is at 48 samples, so that we are in the AS67 modus. And this is the same, more or less, that what we had here before. I mean, now we're mentioning the IP address and so on. Why? Because we can have two IP addresses because of the secondary adapter there. But more than that, we cannot do anything but to look at the status. There's nothing to change. Going to the next step, and this is very useful. We have here basically a link to the online documentation of the merging audio device. So instead of being a PDF that you have to download, when you have a new version, you have to download the new one and so on, you can straight away, and I'm going to do it for you, click here, and it's going to open on another window. I'm just going to bring it to you to the browser. It's going to open a Confluence page where you have everything about the merging audio device. And of course, it's dynamic, so it's going to be updated when it needs with new information or new functionalities, if any, on that page. So this is very interesting and useful, where you can click all the time here, and it's going to open it straight away.
It's a bit of a test because we're trying the online documentation in one of our applications a bit directly without doing an embedded user manual for the first time. Of course, we expect some people to say, what if I use it offline? But then we can export you a PDF, and maybe we'll put something available for those. Let's see.
Well, perhaps just for people here is that on the Confluence, you can each time export itself as a PDF. So if you know that you're going to go to a gig, or for a gig where there is no internet because it's in the middle of forest or whatever it is, you can previously export it as a PDF, and so make sure that you have everything with you. This is valid not only for the merging audio device, but for any type of pages that you will find on the Confluence.
Indeed.
Now we see that we move to the right side of the MAD. And this is about the numbers of channels. So there are a few things to be said. I'm going to open my driver, which is basically behind what you saw is basically a picture of the driver. Right? It's exactly the same. Here I can go from 8, each time per 8, from 8 to 124 inputs. So this is the ASIO input to my main DAW, for example. The same is for the outputs, from 8 to 128. And if you go higher in sample rates, here I'm talking 1FS, so 44, 148K. If I go higher sample rates, you see then the breakdown, how it goes each time divided by 2. If you go to 88.2 or 96, 176.4 or 192, again divided by 2, and so on up to DXD and DSD, basically 384 kilohertz, you divide by 2 again. Now, the thing is that we have here, especially I'm working, for example, on this case on a laptop. So I have it's a good laptop, but still there's a limitation to the process that is available. Obviously much bigger than what is available to for example, a very good desktop or a tower or whatever it is, or a premium computer. Now, that's why with MAD, with merging audio device, I can do many instances at the same time that have access to my ASIO, which is great. But it means also that I will eat much faster resources because I have a sequencer, I have I don't know, an immersive panner, and I have a DAW or 2 DAWs and some effects running and so on, and VSTs and plugins and whatever. And so if I only need 48 in and outputs, I should put 48 in and outputs and not 128. Like here, I'm on purpose did just 24 in and outputs so that I still can liberate the bandwidth that I would use for 128 for other applications. And this is very important to have this dimension flexibility depending of what the resources of your system are capable, first of all, and what is needed for your job to be done depending the application. So this is the ASIO in and out, and it is at the same time what we call a multi-ASIO. Here, for instance, I have a ripper that is connected as an ASIO. I can play my ripper, and I have a Pyramix that is also connected as an ASIO. So this is now, it is very basic. It is just stereo channels, but of course that can be enhanced. So the idea is that my Pyramix mixer is connected here with ASIO output 17 and 18. And if I close this guy, I go here into my ripper output, and this is connected, if I remember well, with output 7 and 8. Okay, so those outputs are connected, and obviously they're then within my Animan, and those outputs are connected now to my Anubis. But basically, it is 17 and 18 and 7 and 8 are connected to my different sources on my Anubis that you can see here, and so that I can use 24 ASIO in and outputs independently of what workstation I'm using. Okay, so I have this 24 ASIO that independently I can use. Of course, once they're used in one DAW, I cannot use them in the other one. But that gives a very flexible and freely type of way of working in that aspect. Now, the last thing, the bridge channel here that also can go up to 128 if I wish. This is basically if I want to send directly some outputs, for example, from my ripper into my Pyramix without going through Animan, without having the possibility to have them on my Anubis. This is typically if I want to have some downmix or from a ripper because I have some virtual instruments in there, and then have the output going into my Pyramix. I haven't prepared it here or shown it here, but you see it straight away that if I go back to my ripper, if I go back to my in and outputs, I could have, instead of saying MAD output 7 and 8, I could have used the bridges there and then connect the bridges input into my Pyramix, for example. Okay, I just didn't prepare it that way, but I could have done it that way. So this is very important to understand, that you have here the bridge capability and the multi-ASIO at the same time. Ricardo, do you want to add something to that?
No, that's pretty much it. The bridge is very useful if you have, as soon as you have the master host ASIO, and then you have ASIO clients, you can easily work with the master ASIO host that would have the interface connected to the bus, and then within this main DAW, you could have isotope restoration, doing restoration on the side, and bring that into the DAW for monitoring through the same interface. So it says what it says. It's a bridge between the ASIO at that time. So yeah. And of course, it's important, like you said, to be careful when you calibrate those. When you decide how many channels you set for input and output. We don't like to have extra channel useless than it takes bandwidth. And of course, we all know that a desktop can be very powerful compared to some laptops when you work in native mode. So, yeah.
Then we have also something new, which is the ASIO setting. That means that we have, first of all, here the sample rate, but the idea as the merging audio device, it's not just a driver, it's a device. So basically, it, as you can now understand it, it can communicate and connect to several applications. Might it be workstations or effects like Ricardo just mentioned, like isotope or whatever it is. And obviously, you would like that all those guys, depending what you do and the way you do, change the sample rate at the same time. Or at least not if you have 5 devices connected together, that you have to go through all those 5 devices and change the sample rate. So the idea is that you have a few functionalities here that are very important. So I'm here in the master ASIO host as the merging audio device. And if I click on that, I can see different function or different applications available. These are the applications that basically merging audio device has seen running on my computer. So here I've run my Pyramix, an Ovation, and a Ripper, and the merging audio device. I'm going to forget the first one here. That is irrelevant for the moment. So if I set my master ASIO host to Pyramix, that means that Pyramix, when I change the sample rate, it will change the sample rate of my merging audio device, and at the same time to all the connected devices that are available in my computer. So my Ripper, for example. This is perhaps the functionality I want. Now, let's say that it is rather my merging audio device that I want to connect and change the sample rate, because I'm using, depending the job, different application and different workstations, and I never know exactly which one I'm using. So I can say merging audio device is the master, and now I change the sample rate here. And all my connected applications that are open at this very moment will change their sample rate. Nevertheless, you have to be also aware that the sample rate zone in Animan will play a role, meaning that for the moment here, I have my Pyramix as the elected queen or king, or my workstation rather, elected as a queen or king in my sample rate zone. And now if I change it here, it will change the Anubis as well, obviously. If I select that it's the Pyramix, I will then select the Pyramix sample rate, and it will change the whole everything what is in this sample rate zone. So it has an implication, depending the workflow you choose, in terms of what you choose here as the master as your host. Then obviously you have the buffer size, and the buffer size, again, it's dependent of the capabilities of your system, of what you're doing with here. Here again, I'm on a laptop, so I'm a bit on a higher side of the buffer size to be able for the computer to process all of that, and at the same time to broadcast what we're just doing now, this webinar. This is a very interesting tick box as your host mix save mode, yes or no, so I can untick it or tick it. This is very important. As we said that we have several DAWs working at the same time, we would like generally that they work or that they are sample accurate. And this is more like in a playback environment, playing back different DAWs and mixing something together, for example. Now, this though may or can increase latency, because it will refer to the one that has the biggest latency and retard all the others to be able to be sample accurate to the one that has the biggest latency. This is fine as long as you mix, but as soon as then you want to record something on another device that has a lower latency, for example, you can untick mix safe mode so that in the recording you have the lowest latency of the workstation that has the lowest latency, but of course you're not anymore sample accurate with all the workstations together. So this is a little button that depending again what you're doing, you're gonna either tick it or untick it. Ricardo, you want to add something on that?
Yes, exactly. It's also safety measure to prevent you would not like an ASIO host to change something on your main master host, which would cause like a small glitch if you launch something in the background because the delays of the clients has changed. So the safe mode is a safety for that in the sense also. And just as you mentioned above the sampling rate, we added that for those that will notice that it's a new setting, because we thought of users that don't run the ASIO at all could now monitor sounds on their PCs, change sampling rate, checking for, let's say, sound files, sound libraries, changing sampling rate. So it allows a workflow on the WDM side where you can change the sampling rate and monitor different things without having any ASIO running. So that's quite interesting if you use the sampling rate with as a master host, the merging ASIO device itself. So the MED. So it's new, and it's to suit different workflow, I would say.
And then we're going to come to a very interesting part, which is the VDM settings. So This is basically for what I have here. I have a Spotify, for example, and what I'm doing now with Ricardo over Skype, and the way I can broadcast some YouTube videos over my driver. This is
Kitten Kitty by Richard Doddridge Blackmore.
So here I'm playing some Spotify. I'm on purpose not playing music to not have copyright issues. So this is now something that goes over VDM, over Windows, and is going to the merging audio device. How do I set this up? It is basically, let me go back to the merging audio device here. First of all, I enable it, and then I set how many channels do I want per pair. Up to 8, basically. We decided not to need more for the moment. And then if I look at the inputs, it gives me the numbers of inputs or the type of inputs I've set up there, 24. That means that for the moment, my VDM input, so my Windows input 1 and 2, will actually be my ASIO input 23, 24 in my environment. So if I go to my Animan, my 23, 24 here, if I open this guy and that guy there, I see that my 23, 24 of my input is I put the phone here so that I'm hearing what I'm sending and what Ricardo gets back. So I connected the phone to the 23, 24 that now you're getting over VDM. So this is actually not an ASIO 23, 24, it's the VDM 1 and 2. And exactly the opposite way, so that I can hear, for example, Ricardo, or I can hear the Spotify I just played. So the output 2324 goes now into my VDM source that I created on my Anubis, and it's my ASIO 2324 that becomes now my VDM 1 and 2. And because it's enacted like this, I have now the possibility of using those. Of course, I could have separated my stream from Ricardo to the Spotify, for example, but for ease of usage, I just did it together, okay? And now, of course, one aspect that is important is that I have also, just let me find it, I have also now the Windows settings that can play a role in there, where I set my merging audio device as an input master device and as an output master device. And now I have all the different applications that are running. And of course, I have different volumes of that, and they have a direct access to my VDM input or output, depending the way I look at it. I could, though, nevertheless, for whatever reason, decide that my Skype with Ricardo could use other drivers that I want the speakers of my laptop or whatever to be able to hear him differently, and so you wouldn't hear him on that aspect. But this is all interacted and plays a big role in there. Ricardo?
Yes, exactly. And what's interesting is within that WDM, we have also a bridge, so users can record back or monitor back the Spotify feed or the sound files you have on your desktops or whatever in the DAW in an input strip, by example. So you could compare snares sound, drum sounds here and there, mastering sound within the DAW you're mixing at the present moment. So it becomes interesting to do that. You could record a Spotify feed, play guitar over it. So these are the things that comes also with that WDM. And people tend to say, you brought that to on the PC side. We actually bring more than what's available on the Mac. We all know that Mac has a different architecture for the sound and that you can easily monitor with the system built-in sound card and stuff like that, aggregated devices. But on the Mac side, there's a problem remaining because not everybody has the driver that allows you to record back or monitor feeds from Spotify or the Mac sounds within the DAW that is loaded with the driver. It becomes a problem, and you have to use like Soundflower or the new VB virtual cable from Vincent Burel that's on Mac now. And here on the PC side, we bring you a bridge WDM that allows you actually to exactly have the monitoring of everything within your own DAW, and voila.
So To make it very clear, we have afterwards a few drawings that, for a few example, a few case studies or practical cases, if you prefer, that we really emphasize on typically how to link it and connect it to Spotify or YouTube or whatever type of online platforms and so on. The next functionality that I wanted to talk about is here, is that all those changes have to be applied. That means that while you make some changes, you will have a little star next to the functionality or the setting there, basically, if you change something. And until it is not applied, this star, basically, it's not effective, and this star will show up. What is important to know is that, as Ricardo mentioned, some of this application might have a disruptancy of the sound. So this is also important. I mean, while you play back or you fiddle around, it's not a big deal. But while you record, you have to be careful not to change your things, because you might have a little hole, depending on what you're doing, in the sound. Obviously, if you change sample rate and things like that. So it's a double security not to make mistakes if you're in a critical moment, or to make several changes at the same time and apply them at once, which is nice as well. Good. Last but not least, on the first part, important is that you have here the versions, like in the olden days there. This is very critical for our support team. It means that if you have anything, any issues, anything to report, or just a question, you can then come back with the build number, so that our support team knows exactly what has what is related to, if there's a new version, or if there was a bug, or if it's something to be enhanced, or just a manipulation issue or error. Yes, to your question, Mark, is no, this is for ASIO, so there is no possibilities for the moment to run this on Mascore, unfortunately. And we look at it for the moment, but there is no proper functionality at that point.
Exactly.
Good.
We'd like to have some bridge for Mascore eventually, or some solution, but today we're concentrating in providing this device for the native users, and as the first mandate and the first requirement we've had, it was on that side.
The next page brings us to the MAD count of this merging audio device. It means that there's, of course, a limit, as we said before. And if you just need 16 IOs, you don't need to set up 128. But this gives you a picture of what is possible with this device in terms of in and outputs, bridges, and VDM. So obviously, if you have several machines connected, 24 channels, for example, for a Pyramix, and 24 other channels for Ripper, that will make a total of 48. Obviously, it's just math and goes together in one FS, and shares by 2 when you go to 2 FS, and by 4 to 4 FS, and so on and so on. There's another question: is it possible to monitor a VDM source that is a different sample rate than the ASIO driver? So this is a tricky question, because obviously, you might be in a 96K environment, for example, in the ASIO, and you will connect, let's say, to YouTube because you want to just quickly check a video out or some audio out. Obviously, YouTube is not in 96K, but it will work. So there is an SRC somewhere, and I call it SRC. I shouldn't call it SRC because we don't know exactly what it is. But there is something where it converts the sound that you receive, not your, let's call it professional sound, but the sound coming from VDM is converted. And this is done, for instance, for the YouTube, this is done by the browser. So we've noticed that for Chrome, there is actually a bad behavior in the SRC type, unlike the Firefox, where it works very well. So depending then what you want to do, in which direction, with what application, whether it's a browser or an app like Spotify, the behavior might be different. But yes, there is a form of SRC on those applications with VDM.
Exactly. Where there's no SRC today is between the ASIO, the master host ASIO, and the clients. Today we don't have an SRC there for the moment on the ASIO side, but we could consider that we have today actually WDM SRC workflow.
This is a little information for our broadcast friends. So this is basically, I mean, not only, but mainly, at least at this present moment for them. So basically the MAD, the merging audio device, is also deployable in virtual machine environments. So this is very interesting. It is supporting the ST2022-7. So basically this is this double, I mean, this redundancy, this full redundancy of two streams, two audio streams that are in two separate cables independent. This driver is supporting it. And a support for NMOS, ISO 4 and ISO 5. If you have specific questions about those broadcast applications, either check out our other webinars or come back to us with your questions, and we happily answer them. So we're going to look at three practical cases. Sorry. Basically one for our Pyramix users, our native Pyramix users, one including the VDM, how to work with it in the integration, and one basically then opening it to any type of other DAWs. Excuse me, I will need to drink some water. It's very warm.
Yeah, we let you drink water, don't worry. And I take the opportunity to mention that currently the driver, the merging of the device is, we certify it on Windows 10 actually. It's a Windows 10 certified driver, so because of the implementation, we don't recommend users to even try on Windows 7 for the WDM side for certain. So it's recommended for Windows 10. And currently it's in release candidate state, and we hope to release it very soon to the public, to all Anubis or Horus Hapi NADAC users even today. So don't hesitate to contact us if you want to try it out.
Good. Let's go to the first slide. I enhanced a little bit my microphone as has been requested, the level. So the thing is that we have here a frame basically that shows the computer, and inside the applications that are installed. And on the left side, we have a merging hardware device that is an Anubis, but it could be a Hapi or Horus. That's exactly the same on that aspect. But that is needed to be able to run the merging audio device. Good. The first application would be simply that I have another workstation or a MIDI device or whatever it is, or sequencer, here a Cubase for instance, to be able to run next to my Pyramix native or another DAW. That means that my Pyramix native is master, ASIO, so I have the connection to the network and of course to the merging hardware device, the IOs, but I have a bridge up to 128 channels in 1FS to my Pyramix native. So it means that my stems, for instance, of my VST instruments or other type of things can be directly rerouted into my Pyramix and mixed there, for example, for an output. Then the next example is that I not only can have one, but I could have two bridged ASIO application. So I have my Pyramix again here, I have now my Cubase as I had before, and I added an Ableton. So I still have 128 bridged channels that I can share between those two applications. And that makes a lot of possibilities. Again, I choose those Cubase Ableton. It could be something else. It could be a Ripper and a Sequoia, for example, or whatever, depending what you need to do. Or it could be an isotope, for example, depending what your workflow and what your needs are. Then, let me go to the next VDM integration. So the Windows driver model, in terms of the sound that what we hear for the moment here, for instance, with you. So I have now here the Pyramix native and a Spotify. So that's what I showed before, is that I have my Pyramix open. Let me go and get it. And I can make a playback. And over it, I can open my Spotify. And I have my Spotify playing over the top of my Pyramix. And then, of course, I mix it here in my Anubis. But it could be also be triggered and leveled as an input in Pyramix. So this is as I want. So now my Spotify goes into the MAD, becomes basically my ASIO 2324, and I input it in my Pyramix, or I play it back onto the network. This is then a patch issue. Where do I patch it? The next possibility is then, of course, what I'm doing a little bit here, but then I have a graph that shows exactly what I'm doing here, but basically Pyramix native, and I have a Spotify, and then I broadcast something over YouTube, or I could listen something from YouTube, of course, but I could have more than one VDM application running at the same time. It is very useful for gaming also. I haven't had here an example now, but gaming software or applications, games basically, are very much working on VDM, and then you can connect directly the sound in and outputs, mostly outputs, but also inputs, some have inputs, so that you can have them, either you work on them or either you just want to play with them with audio high quality, because you have an Anubis for the headphone, for example, and for the microphone. Then the next example is obviously that you can choose, you don't need a Pyramix, you can use whatever DAW you want in ASIO. Here it's a Ripper, for example, you can use a Sequoia, Nuendo, or Pro Tools on PC, or whatever it is. Then this is basically for any DAW users, that's what I just explained. And then of course, you can still add a bridged in and output. So here I have an ASIO in and output, so this will be, so to say, my master device, my bridged I/O, so which is my Ableton, and I still have my VDMs as devices next to it, connected to the network. And the last, no, it's not the last one. Obviously, for the moment, we have only shown what is happening in the computer, but then, like for some of you, you're already familiar to that, you have a switch, and then you connect all your different hardware merging devices or other computers if they run MAD, and you then can have access for all those different devices, either VDM, either bridged or ASIO, to the network of, for example, the in and outputs for a Hapi or Horus or an Anubis. And that makes it suddenly very flexible in terms of what you're able and what you can do out of that. Ricardo, something to add on that?
Yeah, no, it's very good. So it synthesizes everything. So basically, you can imagine in the slide before, where you had the ASIO clients, that the top DAW was the master host, and everybody follows it when you change sampling rate. And so it means that you work in 96K in the Pyramix or the Reaper, and then you change to another project that's 48, then it's the master host. Everybody below will follow you. And as the question asked, you could still play the WDM at another sampling rate. And then the other scenario I immediately want to clarify, but it's very good. It's that it's like, what's great about it is, if you have an Anubis, then with the system of the monitoring of the Anubis, the way it's made with the monitor mission, it really provides you with the sources independently, and you can easily connect it so that you tap on the Anubis DAW and you listen to the Reaper or Pyramix, and then you tap the source. You make a source MAD or WDM, you tap on it, then you listen to your system sound and everything, and you can even sum it in Anubis, in the monitoring side. You could really compare like different files directly just by interacting on the Anubis and toggling the sources you want to listen, sum the sources. You can even do, then what's wonderful is the Anubis provides you all the monitoring mission tools for the WDM, which mean that you could play a file and downmix it with the Anubis also. On the source of the WDM, you could use the downmix and other ref and crossfeed or whatever you want at that time. So that's what's great about also having Anubis with it, though despite that you will have interesting function with Horus and Hapi as well, but the monitoring side of Anubis is very interesting in this case.
And that's exactly what I'm going to show you to end with. So this is basically the one with the network, and here I had a little graph which what I'm doing now actually to be able to air all of that. So this is the remote control of my physical and existing Anubis that I have down here, on which is connected the microphone, this microphone you hear me from, and my headphones. So my phone 2, that's where I'm connected. And now if I cut my speaker, I cut my microphone, obviously it will cut it for you as well. And so this is where it becomes interesting. Sorry for the bad music it will make, but now I will play my Ripper, my Pyramix, and my Spotify.
To be rough,
and if I go back here,
than the human race,
I now can
which she could give 50 reasons,
independently choose my Spotify, my DAW1, and my DAW2. Okay, and this is exactly what Ricardo was explaining. And how do I do that? Let me stop all of that again, because it's gonna turn into a nightmare otherwise.
Yeah, we're losing you a bit because I think with the Spotify and the Skype screen sharing, I think it's
yes. Excuse me.
It's a lot of load. So we lost a bit of the words you were saying because
excuse me.
Everything at the same time.
Yes,
but you need to calibrate the system and
of
maybe
course. But it
not.
but it was just to show that I have all the different sources here. My two ASIO DAWs, then Ricardo at the same time from Skype and the Spotify, and myself here. And this is now where in Anubis I can select all of them, and this is how I'm connected. So it means that I have my Pyramix, my Spotify, and at the same time I air something to you over YouTube. So, and Ricardo over Skype goes back into the VDM to YouTube. And I have a Ripper, and all of that is connected here with the different sources that have or can be summed together, which I did just now, without latency, or independently can be listened to, and so on and so on. Great. So I think we kind of explained. We went to the end of what we wanted to explain, Ricardo. Or is there something else?
No, I think it's it pretty much covers it. We'd like to eventually bring in on our Nolan database some of the use case you bring there. We will probably make use cases where we put the Animan connection and how it's done and how to achieve those. But there you have a good summary of what it can do, and it's for us it's a bit of a we're not shy to say it. It's a game changer because we have something to propose, a solution, and the guys have been working hard. I'm thinking of Georges, David, Dominic, Bertrand. We've been very implicated into this, so I hope our users will appreciate it.
I'm sure they will. So thanks, Ricardo. Thank you, everyone. If you have other questions, please post them on YouTube or via the standard means over email or telephone and so on and so on. Have a lovely day and see you at the next webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye, Ricardo. Thanks.